welcome to Lorwyn Cube, the place where May has been, hanging out this whole day and getting ready to build a cube.
It's spoiler season.
Spoiler season
again.
This is Uber Cube, and this is your host, Anthony Adams, and today we are joined by whoever wants to go first. I don't care.
Stu, and let's get to the important one.
Yeah.
You know who you are.
It's Stu. No, I'm kidding. Hi, it's me, May, and we're also joined by our guest.
Hello.
This is our guest. Hello. Welcome to the show. Hello.
Am I the guest now? Is that what I've become?
Yeah.
Yes,
I figured it would be May, and then handing it off to Stu, and then handing it off to Anthony, and then Anthony handing it to me. But I was still on mute, so I was like, uh-oh.
I'm known for throwing in curveballs. We're
also doing mime vision too, because Stu and I have camera active and the other two have their cameras off. So this is going to be fun. Let's see what happens here.
Well, okay. So as you know, I've got this bathroom remodel going on, or have had going on, still kind of going on. But behind Anthony and I are two wonderful pieces of Magic the Gathering art, right? A couple of classic Mark Teddins, and one of them on Anthony's side is Mana Drain, and the one behind me was or is the art for a card that has come up in discussion. I'm going to repeat this because I feel like I almost want this to be an ongoing theme for Necropotence. And so following our episode with our esteemed friend Gavin Verhey, to all of you Necropotence enjoyers out there,
buckle up.
Buckle up, yeah, you are wrong. I'm just going to say that. Stop pronouncing words correctly.
All right, so let's move on. So, Usman, the reason why I reached out to you, you were in the Discord and you were trying to get your set review information put together. You're trying to build out Lorwyn Eclipsed. Am I right?
That is correct, because it is currently that stop in the train of 2026 preview.
Choo-choo.
Chew, mother ducker. So you just kind of whack. But so you kind of said in the Discord, I don't know if I can get this out in time. And I immediately saw you and I felt you. Even though we didn't speak, I'm like, I get it. I don't even know what we're going to talk about this week. But I'm pretty sure what I know what I'm going to talk about now that Usman's now said this out loud. I'm going to get Usman to come on. And we're going to actually talk about, Lorwyn Eclipsed. We are going to do that. There is a reason for that. But I actually wanted to ask some content creator questions, specifically directed towards writing to kind of kick this episode off. What's it like to have writer's block? How much pressure is there with the ever-changing landscape of Magic and the constant, set reviews? And that I even said before we started recording this episode, you were all kind of joking, it'll be fine. We can just make this go on forever. I'm like, no, this is time sensitive because this is Lorwyn Eclipsed. And Usman just wrote a paper. Regardless of my feelings on the matter, in order for this episode to be even partially relevant to any kind of conversation,
got to get it out there.
It's great to get it in at least before people order cards.
Yep,
that's it, right?
Yeah.
So
that was the idea. I wanted to get this out done. I wanted to the last few articles. I wanted to get done. Did you want to talk about drinks, by the way, since y'all are drinking? Because don't y'all usually do that?
You know what? You're absolutely right.
I'm having brown water with ice in it. It tastes like an old fashioned.
I'm also having some brown water with ice in it, and it does taste like an old-fashioned as well. Well done, Anthony.
Well, I guess somebody has to step in for a decent drink. I actually got myself a Lion Bridge, the Spice Must Flow Black Ale.
Ooh.
Supposedly it tastes like French toast in a mug.
Ooh.
I don't have a mug, so I'm just going to have the French toast.
Nice.
I'm drinking decaf French vanilla coffee.
Oh, tasty.
I don't know. I was just craving decaf coffee. I'm just like, all right, I'll...
Well, I got a question. How does
Don't
your
worry, I
body...
won't judge you for drinking decaf.
Well, first question is, how come your body craves the idea of something that doesn't have caffeine in it? And the second, what's the science actually behind removing caffeine from coffee? And do you actually get all the caffeine out? Question mark.
I think
this is a complicated question.
You get most of it. I don't think you can completely
I
remove
could explain
every
it
bit.
to you, but you are opening a can of worms, my friend.
All right, so kind of to my point. I think that weird little goofy question I actually asked kind of correlates. Let's kind of start out with something that people want to know. You write a lot of articles. You just dropped one for Lorwyn Eclipsed. Just posted it today. I'm not going to say I have something to do with that, but you definitely expedited whenever I said I wanted to talk about it tonight. It's kind of
my goal to get it done sometime today before the pre-release happened. Because earlier, I think I wanted to try to get it done by Monday. I was like, all right, I want to get this done during the week, and just like it felt like a lot of stuff was kind of just like, try to get. Usually, what I did during Spider-Man was to do like a kind of like what I would call like a draft marathon, where it's like you do a draft in the morning and then a draft, and like we usually seed the new cards, which is usually kind of my standard policy when trying new stuff out. And then I was like, all right, let's try to do a draft on regular cube day, and then do a draft marathon. But like we had somebody who we hadn't seen in a long time show up on the cube night, so like, and I couldn't make it. And then like on the draft marathon, I was like, all right, let's try to rally the troops for that weekend. And like it just did not have enough people. I'm like, well, this sucks.
Quack. Whack. So I've got a lot of questions here. What cube do you normally use as your foundation for card evaluation? Like contextually speaking, what are you normally working with to test these cards in? I think I know the answer, but I'm asking.
Yeah, of course. So I have like kind of like what I would call like kind of my regular cube, or just like my standard cube. It's just like a legacy power level ish, where it's mainly just goes by legacy ban list and just like other, like I've been tinkering about like what I want to do with the power level with it. Like I've been like kind of thinking whenever I tend to do these big changes, I tend to sit on it for a while. But also one thing I've been noticing is that kind of last year too, when we started, because I was doing a lot of like theory articles, but like when it was like constant set season, it was just like, boom, here's a new set, boom, here's a new set. I'm like, okay, because that's where my brain would go just to like evaluate new cards. So when I've been doing these kind of
context to that matters, but the reason why I'm asking that is, and you kind of just said it incidentally, you said theory, you're thinking about where this would fit, because a lot of your articles, please explain to the audience how you measure and evaluate, I guess, in your articles, the formatting that you're using, and how you've kind of embraced a wider of community outside of, say, the standard vintage or the Power Max community.
And for additional context, right, you do give the cards, like you have rankings, like 1 to 5 with some increments in between, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously there's a fair amount of thought to put in there. Are those kind of in a vacuum per se, where you're just looking at them as, I don't really think they fit. Maybe the ability or the text is a little too generic, or it's very replaceable, or it's not very fun. Tell us a little bit about that ranking system and sort of all the points by which you're basing that upon.
Yeah, so what I've been doing lately has been like, so I've been kind of tinkering with what I want to do with card evaluation, because it's been, I've been doing these cube reviews since like New Phyrexia. Like when COVID was happening, I just like didn't, it was kind of like I couldn't cube for a while, so I kind of just like didn't do as much writing during that time. But like since we've, since things have gone more normal in that regard, been able to do more writing, I've been kind of refining it, especially since I'm self-published on a Substack. It's kind of like, how do I want these reviews to go? Because like initially a lot of it was just kind of based on power. It's just like, okay, here's what I expect to see play in cubes for a long time, or what to be good. And I think when I did I did kind of a post-mortem on 2025's sets, and kind of was like, one of the cards I thought of was like Light Stall Inquisitor, for example. It's a kind of like the 2/1 with vigilance, and it has some text of some type.
It's very good.
At first I was like, okay, this card will probably go in every cube. But then the more I thought about it, I don't know if people tend to look at evaluation that way. Like a lot of the times it's just like, how much do I want this card in my decks or something? So that's been something I've been tinkering with. And then also just kind of an idea that I'm also kind of tinkering with is the idea of just like a scale for vibes, in terms of just like other factors that like people might find a card boring. I planned on doing something using like card tags, or just like noting like, this might impact something, but like honestly, I just wanted to get this article done before today, and I was just like, I'll deal with this later.
So that's kind of like a left brain, right brain type thing. So one is doing kind of a linear concept of power. I know you use 1 through 5, but for the sake of doing it, this is a 1 to 10, right? Or a 0 to 100%, whatever you need, right? For your thoughts on what I'm talking about. So you can say, or A, B, C, D, E, F, I don't care. Pick whatever you need. Mm-hmm. But we've gotten so used to like systematically grading stuff on kind of that system that we all used in, our education systems here in the United States and other places, right? And we look at something as an A plus, we're looking at it 95 and above. Like, at least that's what it was when I was younger. It's probably 114 and above now. But when we're doing these card evaluations, that was pretty straightforward, right? But now you got this whole different, like, Cube has grown larger. The community's gotten bigger. We've had context shifts in cubes and how people do themes. And now you're trying to incorporate vibes. And my question for you as a writer, you're taking two different ideas. You're taking one that's like, okay, power, straight up power, raw. What is this? How does this impact the game when it hits? How impactful, like a meteor hitting the ground, right? Or how does this make people feel? And these are two different ideas. And I'm trying to figure out, how does that impact your writing? How hard is that you're taking two different ideas. You're taking art and you're taking math almost. That's what you're doing at the same time as far as I'm thinking about it.
I think at the end of the day, like, it's mainly going to be more, I forget the left or right brain, which does what. I should know this, but I totally don't. I think left brain is more like artsy and right brain is more quantitative. Is that right?
We're going to go with yes.
We'll go with yes.
My left brain is saying that sounds great.
Subjective and highly debated anyways, so any guess is as good as any.
Yeah, we're not hooked up to electrodes right now. I don't even know if mine's working, if we're being honest, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, same.
It's something like I've thought about in terms of just like if I really like, they're primarily based on whether I think cards will make it like fit power level wise, because that's primarily the axis that people tend to look at things through. Even if they're kind of dialing that lens further, kind of like when you're at the eye doctor and they're checking lenses and they're just like using, here's this first lens, it's like A or B. It's kind of like that, where it's kind of being viewed through another lens. And like in theory, like I could do, and I've given it some thought in terms of just like, what if I did a review that was like, oops, all vibes? But I'll be honest, I don't have the time or really the energy, and I don't care enough to do that.
That was my follow-up for that, like the added pressure. So for me, I always look at like the MTG, the Salvation, and I'll look and see what like White Wolf and Steve Mann, and I'll read your articles. And sure, they're power max, and everybody, there's kind of, I don't want to go down this culture right now, this idea of power max is not in vogue right now, conversationally, at least in small subsets of the community. But in the same sentence, that adds like an additional pressure for you as a writer, as a content creator. Like, what type of writer do you have to be now, right? Are you writing for, it's almost like you're writing a white paper for an engineering study, or now you're going to write a novella.
Well, I think you can choose your side. I think you can
have
actually
to pick what you want to do.
I think you can separate that as two different streams of thought, right? So if the idea is that you're going to approach any set review, any card review even, down to just the vacuum of, is this strong enough for either and I'll quote unquote this normal vintage cube, right, where you may not have all of those power max, demonic consultation, Thassa's Oracle, initiative, all that kind of stuff, and maybe even include that where you do have the power max, right? That's conversation number one. And then, but that's going to be a pretty short article, right? If a set comes out and you're looking for only cards that are going to be included at that kind of power level, usually you would only expect a couple of cards, right, here or there, spattered around. Whereas if you've got, and again, these oops all vibes, which I think is unbelievable, right? Trademark that immediately before I steal it. But I think that is a wonderful way to approach like the fun aspect, right? Because things that make tokens and put +1/+1 counters on things, and things that have new lines of text and different and multiple lines of text, generally. And not to say that the more expansive and the more complicated a card is, the more fun it is. Sometimes it only takes a line or two to make a card fun. But I feel like that's where that vibe conversation can potentially resonate more and more as we expand Cube out, period, as not just a format, but almost a super format, that resonance with the community and with the curators is going to be more aligned with, I'm not just a vintage, or I'm not even maybe a vintage cube curator. I am a cube curator of a thematic cube, of whatever the again the vibe of the cube might be. So I like that there's some amount of separation there, but if that's something that obviously, and you're looking at kind of the more holistic view, that's got to be very complicated to try and compress that down into a single article, right? And how does that, and if that's the approach that you're going for, I suppose I'd follow it up with, how does that sort of lead to these reviews and sort of the approach to each of these cards?
Well, even so, even before we get to that question, back to as I read your initial post and I feel writer's block, I don't put the level of detail into my just little bit of outline that I write here. And we just kind of free flow once I post this. And then as I'm reading your articles, they're very structured. You have to go down this whole path of you're basically appeasing two different types of students in your class, right? And then while doing that, and I appreciate the vibes only plus the numbers, but how much time do you actually have to produce this? By the time you actually see every single card in this set to when you're actually trying to release this card, what are you looking at for a time frame as a person trying to beat a pre-release?
For like an article, like
yeah, as an article, you're not trying to beat the pre-release, but you're trying to get this information out to the masses so they kind of know what they're walking into.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's something like I've just because I've been doing it for a while. Like sometimes it's just like in terms of just like how I'm doing it. Like I certainly developed practices over time where it's just like before I would just wait till the last minute to write something, and it's like, oh, the set came out, but it's like, why am I doing that? Like the cards aren't necessarily contextual like Moonshadow or something. It's just like I don't need to care about what other cards do to be able to put ink to paper about Moonshadow. It's like, okay, I'll just start thinking about this now.
Spoiler alert, I would say my favorite card from this set, by the way. I think we've already established that, but yes, Moonshadow.
I would say it's probably, if it's not my favorite, it's probably really close. Like there's so much like that it enables, and it's just like really interesting, and it just seems like a very powerful card
for me. It's 5x5. Yeah, the card's great. It's fun. I got to order extra ones now. But that was another thing that you and I were kind of talking about in our DMs is how, I guess in a few minutes we'll do Moonshadow, and I want to go ahead and roll into that. But could you do me a solid and break the card down? Like let's go to the card. I'm gonna have you talk about it because what I really want out of this episode is for people to understand like the amount of effort that you put into churning these articles out, right? And then also so they can understand the process and how you're seeing things. So without even referencing your current, like, I know you've got an article and I know you've already did this work and it's probably in your head. But what I'm asking for with the card, if you could read it to the audience and then kind of do your process and how did you get your vibes? How do you get your number and where do you land? And how do you get there?
Yeah. So if I was to look at the card, just like looking at it, because I remember when I saw it the first time, it was just like, well, this is weird. But it's like Moonshadow, costs a black mana. It's a creature elemental. Menace. This creature enters with 6/-1/1 counters on it. Whenever one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, while this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1 counter, -1/-1 counter from this creature. So it's interesting because like I guess there's several parts to this question because part of it is just like looking for analogs for what cards do, but I think that can also just lead to just myopic analysis because sometimes that'll happen too, where it's just like this card.
But you
is
can
like
do
this.
it. Like there's fundamental pieces to this card right now, just straight up raw information that's provided to you, as you say, myopic. But carry on. I interrupted. I apologize.
I don't care. It's all good. So it's like the first thing is just like it's a one man. Of course, it's like your brain is seeing like one black mana and it's 7/7. It's like what's the catch? And it doesn't necessarily mean it's good. It just means it has a catch to it. It's like all right, so it has 6/-1/1 counters on it. It's like okay, so it's a 1 mana 1/1, and then whenever one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, it removes a counter. And like there's a card called Stalactite Stalker from Rivals of Ixalan, or not Rivals of Ixalan, Return to Ixalan of some variety.
It's an Ixalan.
Yeah, we're back in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, just like where it's kind of similar, where it's if a permanent goes to your graveyard from anywhere, you put a counter, and it's mostly the same. So it's like, okay, this is kind of like that. And then thinking about just like ways that it's different. Because that's one thing I have found is just like I think like something like this is just like, okay, this is a pretty easily analog. It's just like it does that, but it also isn't gated to once a turn. It isn't gated to being only on your turn. So like there's some knobs there. And it's just like also what kind of deck would realistically want this kind of thing. And just like looking through all those kinds of things. Like Vibes is a little different because it's like, what what aspirations could it have, like, other aesthetics, like aesthetics wise, like art, and does the card seem like something that would be interesting to somebody? And those can be a little difficult to kind of gauge, but that's more probably art than science.
So when I first looked at this card, our good friend Cavs Fangelo, we've had on the show. We've had that person on the show multiple times during our Halloween specials, and they've kind of unlocked this in my brain with my Uber Bears Horror Cube to kind of get out of this stuck in the gothic world of horror genre and start going more into like body dysmorphia and body horror and all this, like, I guess all the H.P. Lovecraft for good, bad, or worse, bad person, but kind of this cosmic horror vibe. Well, this card is very almost like Shieldred-esque, and a little sweeter than Shieldred, but it's kind of like a beautiful woman, and then it's we don't know what it is. It could be anything from a dragon to a frog at this point, but it's disturbing. It's interesting. So that was that thematic vibe for me, right? And then I looked at it, and I didn't overthink it. It just says whenever one or more cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere. Well, that's my self-mill package that I have in my horror cube. All right, check, right? So I see that from an evaluation standpoint. And then I look at it for the femme, and I go, well, it's a woman. I can work with that. And then also looks a lot like maybe it could support my aristocrats package. And then later you kind of unlock this thing for me, like, well, it also hits fetches and all these things, right? Like it goes off on a lot of things. So my question for you is, I kind of went straight to like this thematic design idea. And I saw these for two different reasons. One, self-mill, seem mechanical. Then the second one, it's a woman, but also hits aristocrats. I can work with that. And then my follow-up for you, though, the one that I'm working with is this power maximum, full thruster. We're going into the sky here, full burner. Is this vintage cube viable?
No, it's a trap.
I'm asking the one that might know. Besides you,
You're looking at me, so I'm providing a response. If you don't want the raw truth,
Daddy and Daddy are fighting.
then I'm going to give it to you, and I'll pass this over to Usman, and I just want to get this in because it sort of it typifies my draft and play experience on a lot of occasions, because this is how I draft and how I play, is that I look for cards like this that have these super awesome potential payoffs, and if I get this engine right and if I get all the right pieces, it's just going to go off and I'm going to win games, and people are going to be telling stories for decades of, do you remember when I got Moonshadow to be a 7/7 the second after it came down? And then I wake up and I think, oh, I just got slapped by a bunch of 3-mana 3/4s.
So one of the things like I've always tried to do in evaluation is just kind of like one thing I've always been a fan of is the phrase like seasoned to taste. It's just like whenever you read a recipe online, and that's generally what I tend to do whenever, like when I built my first cube, and generally when I tend to look for like advice, like, or even if it's just like looking for reviews on an album, for example, and it's just like, okay, I'll just look for a few reviews. I don't usually just go to one. And then sometimes I'll be like, okay, say, I don't know, say use an album example, like
Sepultura.
Whenever the new Megadeth album comes out or something. I'm just like, what if this person just like hates Dave Mustaine's vocals, which I can't blame them, honestly, but that's okay.
All right, that's blasphemy. Okay, well, we'll not hear any more of that on this show, but continue.
Speaking of a sick album, I'll just go ahead and do this because I actually posted on our Discord, and might as well get that out now. We're on music. Our good friend Chris Fitz, or Discord, posted some sick metal beats. I know we're going off topic here, but did you get a chance to listen to that, Usman? It was pretty amazing. Yeah, shout out.
I pretty much was completely zoned on doing the article for these past few days. I'm just like, all right, like I pretty much nose to the grindstone. It was just like, all right, here we go. Gotta do this.
Gotta put some metal on.
I did. I think I was listening to like some Rush, some like early Rush, and then I think like Roll the Bones and Clockwork Angels and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like some 90s Merciful Fate, like 9 and In the Shadows or something. It was just like stuff I was just like, all right, let's do this. But like, so usually when I try to do article writing, I'll usually just be like, okay, this is kind of a baseline, and I think that's what I try to write for, is just kind of like a baseline, and it's like seasoned to taste, and I trust people to be able to do that. In terms of something like this, I think personally, I'm pretty excited to see, if I was to see this in a vintage cube, like, I'm one of the people that works on the Magic Online vintage cube. So like, I'm also just like, if I say, hey, this card is busted, let's put this in, like, obviously that doesn't mean the card's going in or anything, but I am one of other people, but I'm like, I think personally, it has it has the juice to get there because of, if anything, because of fetches and just like a lot of easy self-discarding kind of stuff.
Well, let's continue to work this card. Let's do some basics. And you correct me. You've been doing this longer than me, so let's. I already did my whole thematic fits and what I think I can fit it to. But let's go with what Stu's kind of doing as far as the trap. What you have to, the hoops you have to jump through, right? So if this comes down turn 1, turn 2, let me ask you a question. This is 1 mana for a starting out as a 1/1, right? At what point have you already redlined where in the game, and we can do vintage, right? We can do vintage for a speed on acceleration, right? And let's go something like my horror cube that goes a little bit more turns. We have more time to develop, right? So we're doing 2 different types of tempo-based cubes, right? As far as the exchange and how long the games last, how many turns I will get against you versus you getting me as the opponent, right? And with a card like this, at what point when this comes down in your mind, is it not, it's not the value that you're, promised, or is it just instant value because it only cost 1? That's my question for you.
Okay.
It only costs you 1 mana. When is value lost?
Yeah, and I think that's like, what's the average case for it? And one thing I also forgot, which tends to help me when I'm doing like looking at card evaluation, is whenever it's generally, I think, a good piece of advice when you're drafting a cube or you're hosting a cube night, and just like at the end of the draft to just like record your decks, like either post them in a Discord or just take pictures of it and put it
Deck
stick it
boast,
on a hard
perhaps?
drive or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Deck Post channel,
Shout out
baby.
Deck Post channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much free real estate, because it's like, oh, what? Because instead of having to theorize, you just have real world examples of card decks. Like, say I want to say like, I think this card would work well in blue black tempo or something, and then instead of having to theorize, it's like, well, why don't I just go to my Discord channel and look at the past few months of blue black Discord, because you can scroll through and see a bunch of blue and black cards. It's like, all right, let's see, it's deck had Kaito and a bunch of, okay, that would, and just kind of like thinking like, okay, if this was to replace like a, I don't know, a Dark Confidant in the deck or something, like how many, because that's also a thing to do in evaluation, is just looking at hits. And because Moonshadow is a card that realistically asks for a certain number of hits in the deck to be playable in a deck, like, discard or fetches or ways to kill creatures. And it's just like, if you have decks like that, then it's like, oh, okay, how many hits do I have for this? Like 8? I have 8 ways to discard, or I have like a bunch of land fetches or land cyclers or whatever. Like, I can make this work.
Sir Conrad, I mean, whatever, right? For 1 mana, you drop this, and sure, you got a 1/1, and it's got menace, and you can put a piece of equipment on it. You're buying time. Little investment in my mind. I'm not saying it's the power maximum viable. I'm saying it's neat because it has so many different directions you can take this, because I feel like you can take this to a lower power cube, and it's not necessarily going to harm it either. Yes, it's powerful, but let's say the Fey Cube, right? In the Fey Cube, with it coming down as a 1/1 for 1, how effective with Menace, how effective would this card be?
In the Fey Cube, it'd be pretty good, because we have a lot of like self-mill and whatnot kind of built in, kind of incidentally, because just, there's a lot of things that can target either your opponent or yourself. But being able to just mill a bunch of cards and get this thing up to snuff is not difficult, actually. Like, if I think of a card right off the gate that would synergize with it very well, is Cruel Somnophage, which has the Can't Wake Up thing, where it's 1 in a blue, target player mills 4 cards, which, to be clear, I also have the Merfolk Secret Keeper, which also just lets target player mill 4 cards. But this one has the power toughness is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards, which kind of fills into this kind of same deck. In the Fey Cube, I think that it could reasonably fit in there. If anything, might be too strong, but
well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I wanted to what I wanted to focus on here is not only the writing that Usman does, but like the process that Usman does. So Usman, where you mentioned some other things. Where does this land with like the Tarmogoyf package, and then where does this land with the Death Shadow? And I can keep going, but I'll stop right there, so I'm not hitting you with 1,000 things here. But where does this line up with these different type of decks? What people could do theoretically?
Yeah, and that's sometimes, and like, part of that is like when I've been able to try cards out, is being able to suss out, just more stuff like that. Like during preview season for and you might see this in the article itself, like when they had the early previews and there were some cards that were shown early, like Emptiness, Deceit, Fable of Figure of Fable, and I'm trying to remember some of the other cards, but I think those were the big three that I can remember.
Yep.
The blue white Sig, I think, was one of them,
And
then was able to see those cards.
Flash one too.
Oh yeah, that one too.
Yeah.
So like, and sometimes it's just like it makes it a little easier to go from I think XYZ to I have some experience with this card, so I can say it more definitively with that kind of thing. Oh, go ahead.
Well, that's a good point. Okay, so let's kind of move off of Moon Shadow. And there's a reason why I'm going to say what I say next. So, off the top of your head, quiz time. How does Bitter Blossom work? What does that card read? Under pressure, go.
One in a black, Kindred enchantment. During your upkeep, create a 1/1 fairy rogue token that's blue and black or something like that.
Yeah, okay. You got that. You can do it from memory. In the current state of Magic where we're at, I've got the Black Parade and one of the cards that was highlighted in my Power Max Vintage Cube, which is 540, so it's not the most pressed. I'm not going to the edge of the 360s. I'm a little bit more loose, right? But even so, Bitter Blossom is a card that I felt like wasn't performing at that peak of Magic, so I moved it over to another cube where I wanted it to exist, right? And people can do that. So you have this pre-existing notion. I'm going to ask you, in the current where we lie, before I set this question up, where do we lie with Bitter Blossom in your mind and current, like, power maximum Moto Online Vintage Cube without, I don't want to get into feelings and people like, oh, he's not right. What I mean is does it belong there any longer on a straight up power level?
I don't think it's really that good power level wise anymore, which feels very strange given its history and its marquee power level.
I agree. And there's no fault to that, right? Like, just because Magic has progressed, we've talked about this. Well, using what you just used as that, and you know this card, now they got Bitter Bloom Bearer for double swamps, right? And it's flash and it's flying at the beginning of your upkeep, and this to May's dismay, it makes a 1/1 blue and black, not Rogue Fairy, for a 1/1. Does that, when you said that you had kind of, like when we did Moon Shadow, you really didn't have any real precedence. We got to kind of do some creative flow there, right? From all of us looking at it from different directions, right? Where's this belong and what all the neat things I could do with this card. Did Bitter Bloom Bearer just get consumed by Bitter Blossom is what I'm asking you. What we know with that, right?
Yeah, what do you mean by consumed?
I mean, like, did we stick another card and it's kind of like, they do the Mangus of the wheel and Mangus of this, and I'm trying to say, like, we know how this card works, therefore this card works. Well, suddenly, I don't think this card belongs in a Power Max Vintage Cube because Bitter Blossom didn't perform.
I think the conflation is, well, the Maguses, like Magus of the Wheel as an example, they were cool ways to be able to delay a very powerful effect, and certainly things like, Wheel of Fortune, incredibly powerful card. I think Wheel's reserve list, right? So that's not going to be printed again. So now we've got Magus of the Wheel. It's attached to a creature. There is some cost associated with it, but something like this, I think that you're almost looking at that, at least in my eyes, I would almost be looking, or would be looking at this card more in the context of the set and how it fits in with the set, rather than looking at how does this attach itself to, as Usman said, a very, very historically relevant card in the last very, very long time in the years of Magic with Bitter Blossom. For me, this is an adjacent card, if you will, but you have to ask the decision, I suppose, if you are a curator that has Bitter Blossom in it, do you want this effect again? Do you feel like it's a strong enough effect within the context of your cube to want to add a very, very, very similar additional effect? So I think power-wise, they're relatively adjacent. I don't know if I would take it any further than just maybe judging it outside of the power of the set itself, though.
So, question for you, Usman, because he kind of did the raw. How do you do the vibes on this one? How do you do the vibe check, right, when you're trying to formulate that for your articles?
Honestly, it's just feel. Like, some of the times it's just seeing what people on various spaces are saying about cards. Like, if they don't like a card because of just like how it feels, like the art's weird, or just like the play patterns seem rotten. And that was some of the things I was going to try to do with the other iteration of vibes, is just like maybe just note like, okay, hey, it's got creature types like changelings are nifty. those kinds of things. But like, it's I wonder if I'm just not the right person sometimes to do this, and like it's kind of like asking me to do like art criticism or something. I'm just like,
Yeah,
it's just not the
no,
worst.
I get that.
So
That makes total sense. So that's almost what you're doing right now is the same thing we do every day. It's almost like imposter syndrome. Do I even deserve to have this microphone in front of my face right now talking about this card?
So one thing I actually this actually does make me think about, like, because there is the Manadrain and Necropotence art in the background.
Thank you.
Which just makes me think of, because I'm obviously not an art critic and I'm not very, very artistically articulate. But like, if I was to say, like, describe Mark Chadin's art, and I was just to say, like, everything looks like a brain.
Yeah.
And it would be like, yeah, everything looks like a brain. And like, I wouldn't know like the terms to use to describe it, but it's like, everything looks like a brain. And I love Mark Chadin's art. Yeah.
Very cranial.
So he's walking around with a glass of Merlot going, that's very cranial.
I am.
Yeah.
With my mink coats.
Very globular.
My cosmopolitan.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is like a lot of these cards that kind of rolled out, and another one that I want to talk about, and I don't want to spend a lot of time because this is not a set review. I think what I'm hoping listeners get out of this is, one, kind of respect the amount of time and the pressure, specifically to people who write, and in this timeline trying to get this information out to them, right? I mean, you are doing that, but also so that they can start kind of doing this for themselves. I know they want to be able to look at your articles, and they want to look at Steve Mann's and White Wolf's and read Lucky Paper Radio's postmortems or whoever, right? Whoever you want to read. But to learn kind of how you do this vibes check and learn how you do this card evaluation, I think is highly beneficial for anybody trying to select a card. I actually have one card. It's interesting. There's a few of them that caught my eye more than others, and it's for my own personal reasons, right? But one I think's really neat was Thirst for Identity. 2 colors, blue, instant, draw 3 cards. Then discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card.
I actually think it's crazy that
this card is amazing.
You've spent a lot of time talking about a couple of cards, right? And I think Bitter Bloom Bearer is a pretty cool card, and I think Moon Shadow, regardless of whether or not I think it's trappy, it's got some capabilities. Thirst for Identity is incredible, and the other card that you've got, and again, to all of our listeners, please go out and check the show notes because we've got all of these cards
and
right there for your
Usman's
review.
Article,
and Usman's article. Go check this out. But you've almost passed over Twilight Diviner.
I put it in the notes on purpose.
I know, but we've been recording this episode for 39 minutes and 7 seconds.
The art is absolutely stunning.
Okay, 2 colorless and a black.
I was about to say,
Elf Cleric.
we haven't talked about several cards on here. I think we've passed over.
Oh, I'm jumping through them because I figured we could flow here and go easy, and it's been a long week for me at work.
Now, okay, the reason why I bring this up, and Usman, the reason why, and Thirst for Identity is a cool card, but I feel like it's not a vibe card for me. Whereas I think Twilight Diviner has got much more of a vibe associated with it, right? So first of all, it's Surveils, and Surveils is a fancy new, like, look at the top card of your library, put it in the graveyard, which is great for card selection, great for hand sculpting. But then it also has, whenever one or more other creatures you control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of one of them. This ability triggers only once each turn. So you're already 3 for 3 with the Surveil, and then you've got this wonderful, wonderful ability that's tied to it. Like, you can keep all your other cards, and I'll take Twilight Diviner, and maybe I'll take a little Thirst for Identity and a Seer or whatever splashed in there. But this, for me, is kind of like a marquee card that I'm so fascinated to hear how you kind of construct the rating for this and apply this like across the spectrum of all the way from typal and vibe and you know, just fun cubes all the way up to the high power level cubes.
Take it on, Usman. I know you weren't ready. Let's go.
So I would say for something like this, like, it's because it's a very utilitarian card. Like,
Sure.
I would say part of it was like, because I didn't put this in the review. I think honestly, I think I was just trying to get a certain number of cards. I usually try to limit it to a certain number that I arbitrarily kind of set. And it was just like, all right, this card just seems fine. But like, usually I tend to like something like this or Seer. I think another utilitarian card is just like, all right, it just kind of does what it says on the tin. And like, that's not like super exciting for people. I mean, like I said, I don't know if I have the best grasp on that kind of thing, but I usually kind of do, and it's like, all right, I guess that the vibes on this are probably fine.
I mean, I look
So
at it as kind of build aroundy, right? I see a card like this in the first pack, and much to my, my success and my win rate's detriment, right? Undoubtedly, I will take cards like this, and I will do anything I can to build around them. Usually, I'm ending up trying to force other cards in that I've drafted because I'm struggling to find the 23rd or 24th maybe card to put in there. But this still seems to me like a card that I am extremely excited to take this card and see what it can do in my deck. And if I'm looking at a card like this and I'm getting excited about it, then I'm excited about the rest of the cube, right? What other cool choices, cool build around cards, what else is out there for me to explore in this cube? And maybe, like I said, that's to the detriment of my wins, but it's one of the reasons why I love cubes so much, is because these kind of cards can really be shine and they can really be built around, and the cube, the curator can make a lot of choices that enable these kind of effects.
May, I'm looking at this for the Fem Cube and potentially for the horror. How do you feel about that from a vibes? When we say vibes, you know what my thematic goal is, and I'll stop talking. What do you feel about this?
Okay, I got fast about 3 different cubes in order. So first, we'll talk about Horror Cube. If you're okay with an elf being there, which, to be fair, I think that the overlap between fairy and horror is a lot bigger than you'd think.
I think so too. I think I agree with you. And thanks for Cavs for making me see that.
Yeah. So, in terms of there being an elf there, I think it could work. Like, the Fae are supposed to be like old horror stories to a degree, right? And this card functionally would add a lot into your horror cube, because you have things that reward you for like self-milling. I think you have like some reanimator packages in there.
Yep.
I think that you also still has like some zombies and whatnot.
I do.
Right?
Yep.
So being able to make extra copies of your zombies is excellent. In terms of the Fen Cube, I'm not sure what their packages look like, but I think that it's just generally
it was a
Golgari,
a mixed bag.
It just requires something else for it to really have that oomph. But its floor of just being a 3/3 that surveils 2 is not nothing. That is not a nothing floor. And if your Fem Cube has like enough ways to actually like utilize that second effect, then people won't feel as like trapped into it. As far as the Fae Cube, I don't have a ton of like cheap reanimator type stuff. Most of my reanimator stuff tends to come out around 5 or 6 mana or so, right? So usually if you were resolving one of those, Twilight Diviner kind of turns it into a 1 more. However, it's an elf cleric that surveils 2. And I don't think that this is going to stay under $5, at least for a few months.
Yeah. So what I wanted to show there, and I know Usman, we did all kinds of curveballs there. We jumped around, but you just saw a lot of personalities.
That's what we do.
Well, you saw a lot of personalities look at a card from all different angles is ultimately what just happened there, right? So back to your writing, and you just saw how each one of us just did what we did as individuals. How do you write for that little weird, little purposeful little trap that I just laid there for us all to look at a card and go, how do you feel about this card? And we all came from all these different angles. How do you formulate your writing to tailor to an audience? You just sampled 4 of us, right? Like now you're going to an audience of several hundred. How do you find your vibes check and your power max, I guess, for people trying to understand what you're doing as a writer?
Yeah, so I think it's about setting expectations, honestly. Like, I think if I try to write, it's that saying, like, I don't even know if it's a saying, but if I try to write for everybody, I'm just writing for nobody. But it's just like, sometimes I feel I should just like write something where it's just like, here's a goblin, like a siege gang commander. It's like, oh, and it's a goblin for, just like, they make goblins or something, or if like, yeah, or just like, here's headliner, whatever, stadium headliner. It's like, oh, it's a goblin for your siege gang commander. It's like, but what if your cube doesn't care? And like, one of the things that I think I've found out over time is just finding out what I expect, at least most people to care about. It's just like, if I was to say like, stadium headliner is a goblin for siege gang commander, is it really worth the text to put it in there? Because these articles are also just a novel anyway. So it's just like, do I want to spend that time putting that much? Is it worth the squeeze to put that analysis there? And it usually isn't. So it's usually trying to find out what's kind of like a baseline of what I expect most people to care about. at least in terms of power level. Vibe is also kind of similar, but I think that's honestly something I'm still just kind of figuring out because it's like not something I tend to put a lot of words into, and a lot of the times it's just like I'll put it there. But that might just be something I just develop more over time.
Well, I'll do one more, and we're not going to read it. A lot of words. We'll summarize it. But how do you feel about our new Selesnya hybrid, or whatever you want to call it, green-white hybrid, Kithkin, figure of the fable? What do you do with this with power and vibes? You're a writer. That's what you do. You produced it for us. How do you land on, I guess, back to the raw power, and then back to, and however people feel about that, right? And then vibes. Where do you go with something like this?
And can I add just on top of that, right? So we just talked about goblins. We could talk about goblins and vampires and very common.
Kithkin.
Right, Kithkin is awesome. It's somewhat iconic, but is it as common? Right, I don't know if you could go into Cube Cobra or whatever your chosen platform to track all of your own cubes or
Cloud
other
Goat
people's
Ranger,
cubes.
baby.
Yeah, I mean, there's not to say again. It's not that this is the first Kithkin, but it's not quite as prevalent. I would assume than again things like goblins and werewolves and some of the more common typal creature types that are out there in Magic. So, how much of an effect does that have on your grading and sort of where you land on a card such as this?
Typal, I guess, right? Yeah. I mean, I think that's what he said.
Yeah, I think part of it is just like finding, because like one thing I think I tried to do one time in an article was just like looking at individual, like if I was to look at like Seer Slicer Goblin, for example, and being like, okay, this cares about tokens for token decks or makes goblins or whatever, or it's also a goblin. Like I could spend a whole lot of time like looking at each individual card and or each individual facet of the card, like, oh, it costs 1 and a red, so it's easy to cast. But like part of it makes me think it's just like, what's the point of doing that? Like why why put those words there? And like I could totally do that if I wanted to stretch it out, but like also it just makes it even more long and not, just a bigger read.
So, as we kind of come to a close, and once the listeners now realize, or haven't realized 15 minutes ago, that I totally clickbaited them into this is a set review, what I want to encourage you is actually go look at this work that Usman's put together, right? This is not where you're going to get what these cards are doing, what these vibe checks are, and these power levels. I look at Usman as an authority figure in the Cube community. Is that what's the word I'm looking for here? You get the idea. A professional. He's a pro.
Yeah.
You're a pro.
Authority figure. That's
the
right.
The godfather of Cube, right?
Yeah, the godfather.
So if I want to know at least what the ceilings and floors are, right, or the vibes, or if he slamma jams us into a powered vintage cube, what are we going to do with that, right? Do I not put this chomping changeling into, because Usman says it's going to my powered vintage cube, by the way. Chomping changeling is amazing, by the way. Check out that card on your own. I think it's one of my favorite pieces of art from this set. But a lot of work goes into and time from someone like Usman and other content creators, and then we just kind of, Stu and I just ramble. That's what we do in May. But to really like put this into prose and take the time and then have it like carefully evaluated by other people look to that to kind of gauge where they should land in the Cube community. I mean, a lot of my card decisions come from people like yourself, Usman. Where am I going to put this card? Am I wasting my money and time by ordering this card? That actually matters to me. Like ultimately, will this be fun? I love these vibe checks you're doing, by the way. So yeah, I mean, thank you for what you're doing for the community.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to emphasize is that nobody gets it right 100% of the time, like myself included. And I think I think you had asked, Anthony, I think earlier, is just like, you may have alluded to it as just like asking, how do you, and not asking me, but just like, how do you proverbially get to where you can start evaluating things? So that's kind of one thing is just like, if I want to look for a recipe, it's just like, if I want to look online or just like go to, I don't know, Anthony Bourdain or something, or, just like TV personality chef who I respect or, something. But the other is just being able to do it like yourself. Like say you open your fridge and then you have like, I don't know, like some pickles and some chicken breasts and thighs.
We're making a Bloody
like
Mary right
onions.
now. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Don't put chicken breasts in your Bloody Mary. Okay, I'm just going to put that out there. Sorry, Usman, carry on.
Oh no, it's like you open your fridge and it's just like, man, I got some salsa in here, and it's like part of it is kind of just developing that kind of stuff over time. And I think one of the most important things you can do as a Magic player, and I think it's important to just kind of learn over time. It's just kind of where you're consistently learning from your mistakes. Because like there have been plenty of times where I'm just like, this card seems great, and then it's just like mid or whatever. And there's like stock up, I think was the big level up moment for me, where I was just like, this card doesn't seem necessary. Like I don't think I really want another big blue draw spell. And it turned out the card, I didn't even test it, and the card was great. And I'm just like, I feel like an idiot. Why didn't I test that card out?
Yep, happens.
And it's just, but it's that thing. It's just like we all are human beings, right? Like I think it's just learning over time what works. I think because part of it, I put it in an article a while ago where it's just like, if you're not actively learning from your mistakes, where it's just like, oh, if I was to just say stock up, it's like, oh, this card is good. I thought it was bad, but it's good. And not learning why I made that mistake, like I'm not actually improving. And I think as a player and person who's looking to put cards in their cube is just like learning from where you messed up previously or where your prior evaluations went wrong can really help to define like where you can find out what goes right.
I think the eerie silence kind of says it all, because that kind of lands it lands where we want to go with this. So thank you for coming on the show again. Yeah, we love having you on.
Thank you for coming on.
You might drop.
Please, we're drowning.
I'm going to write you an email going, you misspelled that, Usman. That is actually...
But yeah, that's always the fun
Tusk.
part where it's like you'd write, like, I'm trying to think of how long, like, some of the articles have been, like, someone will respond, like, oh, hey, I think you forgot this. And most of the time people are good.
It should have been a
They're not, like, trying to be jerks
semicolon
about
and
it.
not a colon.
Yeah, it's like, all right.
Yeah. All right, Usman, we love you. Thank you for all the hard work you do. I really hope this episode encapsulates the idea. I know it's been punishing to hear us bounce around. If you got tricked into thinking this was a set review, go read the actual set review produced by our good friend Usman. I can't iterate enough here how much work goes into the idea of putting thoughts on paper, try to make vibes, and try to do power levels. Two different brains operating at the same time, very short amount of time, creative juices flowing under pressure. I get it. If you need help, I'm sure we can't wait to see your peasant and pauper version of this come out next week. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you, Usman. We're really excited for that. Just kidding, JK. But I want to go ahead and just send us to the socials. We love you, Usman. Where can they find you? What podcast are you on? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you can find me at probably the best place to find my content is on my Substack at usmantherad.substack.com, which is where I have my writings, including the article about this and my 2025 review. I also have links to all my old articles going back to New Phyrexia if you want to like go back and read those for whatever reason. Like, sure, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the Pack One Slick Ones podcast, which I'm on. You can find me on the various Cube Discords. There's a lot of them, and I'm probably in most of them. And then on Bluesky, like I'll post there whenever I feel like it at usmantherad.bluesky.social. If it's Usman the Rad, that's probably me. I figured I was clever because I remember Sark and the Mad, and I was like, well, I'm not mad.
I
guess I'm rad. Okay. Yeah.
I love it. That's fantastic. I didn't know that. I just thought you're like an 80s baby, just like rad. That's rad. Thank you, Usman, again. We really appreciate you. That was fantastic. Stu, and your lovely Canadian, Australian, British accent. Take us away to the socials.
Thank you. Canadian, British, Australian?
Yeah.
That's a new one. I've never got. All right. As always, a big thanks to all of our Patreons, especially to our new Patreon, David Richard Wilsey. Big thank you to you for the support, helping us keep the lights on here at Ubercube. And Chris Fitzgerald, big thanks to you as well for the ongoing support. Much love to you guys, as well as Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice Preston, and Sam McKenna. Again, big thanks. Really means a lot to us here at the Ubercube team. As always, check out the Facebook MTG drafting page, facebook.com/groups/MTGcube. What we at?
It's like almost 1,200 people.
Very nice. Yeah. And as always, if you want to support the show as well as our Patreon, you can use our Inked Gaming affiliate link, inkedgaming.com/Ubercube. All kinds of cool products there. Playmats, dice bags, mouse pads, custom and large volume products available. If you want to get in on the conversation with us, You can find us at Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod. You can also find us via email at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com if you've got a question or comment about this episode or the podcast in general, or about Anthony's vintage cube judgments of cards. Send us an email.
I'm always right. I get it right the first time.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
I do.
You can also reach us
Shadow,
at
baby.
Bluesky, ubercubemtgpodcast.bsky.social. And if you want to check out episodes on YouTube, ubercubemtgpodcast 747. Again, as always, huge thanks. Patreon.com/ubercube for all the support. Come check us out on the Discord as well. I'm trying to fire up some additional live MTGO drafts. We've got a couple of cubes online, and we've also got Chill MTG, who's been on our show quite some time ago. We probably got to think about getting Chill on, but he's got a very, very cool cube that he's got available for play. So
What
if
kind of
you're
bar
interested,
cube? It's really cool.
and yeah, absolutely.
White bordered bar cube.
He does have that white border
that's
bar
pretty sick.
cube.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
so very, very cool. So if you're interested in doing some online drafting, you don't need to own the cards, just a Magic Online account, and we'd be happy to hang out and play some Magic.
And then other than that, we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube, and Usman's going to say happy cubing with us. You ready, Usman? 1, 2, 3. Happy cubing!
It's a trap.
It's not a trap. It's really good. Moonshadow's amazing. You're
It's a
wrong.
trap.